Hey guys, I am here in my humble abode getting ready to tell you about my Lake Guntersville tournament, the final Hobie Bass Open tournament to wrap up the 2019 series, which took place on Lake Guntersville down in Alabama. So, little preface here before we get into the tournament recap. I attended an incredible conference, the Aglow Conference for outdoor riders up in La Crosse, which, despite the amazing networking and opportunities that provided, I was a little rushed to get down to this tournament and start my practice. I got back late Wednesday night, very late. I got on the water and was pretty exhausted on Thursday. Fished until about 5 or 6, and then fished half a day on Friday. Going into this thing, I wasn't feeling real good. I found some fish. I didn't think I had fish to win it, but I knew, when you're on Lake Guntersville, you can pretty much assume that the majority of the areas there are going to hold winning fish. You just have to figure out how to catch them. So what my strategy was kind of going into this thing, I knew September was kind of, famous for a frog bite. So I went, started checking out some mats, did a little frogging, found some areas where I actually did really, really well, almost swimming a frog in open water, if that makes sense, over some real thick hydrilla mats. But the majority of the mats that I found kind of in my practice weren't necessarily what I would like to call ready. And you frog fishermen know what I'm talking about. The grass hadn't quite got to that stage where it got to that cheese looking stuff, that real slop where you cast the frog out and when you move it, the whole mat moves. You can tell it's hollow underneath. You can hear the bluegill popping. I didn't find hardly any mats like that. So I decided to fish deeper grass and fish, kind of some sparse pockets of mixture of milfoil and hydrilla that held a lot of fish and held a ton of bait. So let's enter day one of the tournament. We had 82 anglers from all over fishing this thing, some of the very best in the game, including a plethora of local Tennessee hammers in this tournament. So I got there at my ramp with about 12 other kayakers. I knew it was going to be kind of busy. It's a little bit of a community hole as far as the general area goes, but I knew there were thousands of fish there and shouldn't have an issue really catching my fish. So I get out there right away in the morning. It was a perfect, just a real light breeze. My bait of choice was open water frog fishing. I was almost kind of slow rolling or burning this style of frog over the hydrilla mats in open water. There were a lot of areas where the hydrilla was just inches from the surface and there were a ton of shad that were on top of those mats, and the first thing in the morning those bass would move up on top there and feed pretty heavily. And from what I found, some of those styles of frogs were less intrusive than others. And I proceeded to catch 3 fish this way pretty quickly, including a 17 3/4. Decent first fish. Pretty decent first fish. So I think I had those 3 fish within the first 45 minutes or so. Felt pretty good about filling a limit and then moving out to try to coal up. That was my plan, and we all know that a lot of times that doesn't work that way. So shortly after that, as we all know with Guntersville, there are usually 500 billion tournaments going out of Guntersville at any given time on a Saturday. And this was the exact same case for our tournament. We heard the boats being let out across the way, and as soon as I knew it, and before I knew it, there were 10 to 15 bass boats cycling through the mats out in front of where I was fishing. We knew it was going to get a lot of pressure. There were a lot of fish here. They were pretty active all week. But the nice thing was those bass boats didn't stick around too long. The action wasn't as good as it had been in practice. All of my fish just kind of came up and sucked those frogs down as opposed to coming up and out of the water like they had been previously. So they definitely had kind of caught on to what was going on out there. So as the sun got up, my bite got much more difficult, and I had to kind of transition to a slower style, a more finesse style of fishing. As I started to cover water with 3 fish in my limit, I started losing fish left and right. I lost right here. I lost probably 3 or 4 pounder swimming a creature bait through the hydrilla with a 1/2 ounce Texas rig. Proceeded to lose a couple more in the drains that I had marked some pretty good fish in practice. And for those of you that haven't followed me for a long time, there's something you need to know. If I don't have my limit by about 9 o'clock in the morning, I start freaking out. I mean, I will completely change the way I'm fishing. I'll start fishing fast. I think a lot of tournament anglers are guilty of this. I think it really starts to get into our heads if we don't have a limit, and if we don't trust in what we're doing, it can be really, really tough. And this proved to be true, and I knew this is one thing that this year I was working on the hardest, was keeping a level head regardless if I had a limit or not by mid-afternoon. Ended up going back out to the mats, putting my top water back on, picked up my 4th fish around maybe 1 or 2 o'clock. Keep in mind, tournament's done at 3. So, had my 4th fish, start covering water. As you can see, like, I'm fishing heavy grass. I'm flipping into little pockets between the milfoil. I'm fishing on top of these heavy hydrilla mats. I did punch a little bit, not too much. I didn't think that bite was quite on just yet, at least where I was at. But I covered a lot of water and fished this grass as many different ways as possible. As you can see, when I'm in a position where I don't have a limit, I'll have up to 12, 13, 14 rods hanging off the front of my kayak with baits dangling, and I'll just start cycling through the rods, trying to figure out what's working or why these fish aren't eating. And that sometimes is the biggest mistake that I make, because I ended up with the last half an hour only 1 fish shy of a limit, picking up that open water frog again and burning that thing over the hydrilla, over the milfoil in the open water with a little bit of chop. Sun was up, it was just right, and I just started covering water. And about 15 minutes left to go in the tournament, I hook into probably a 4.5 pounder right as that thing hits the water. Jumps up 3 or 4 times, spits my bait. Gotta be the worst feeling when you're 1 fish shy of a limit to lose your biggest fish, would be your 5th fish, with only 15 minutes to go. That was a point where I knew I could just break my rod over my knee, or I could keep fishing. And that's what I did. I continued to keep fishing. Our tournament, we have to have our photos time-stamped by 3 o'clock. What GPS data and all the internal data allows the tournament director to see when that fish was taken, or when that picture was taken. I looked at my phone, it says 2:59. Make 1 more cast, bam. 15.5 incher, smokes the frog. It's the fastest I've ever reeled a fish in. Put it on the board, picture taken, still by the grace of God, 2:59. So I didn't have a great limit. Those mistakes cost me, but I wasn't out of it. I knew that you had to have a limit both days in order to be up there in contention for this tournament. That put me with 77 3/4 inches, which was about like 33rd place out of the 82 people going into day 2. Definitely not where I wanted to be. I started kind of panicking a little bit when I probably should have kept a little more level head. But I didn't give up. I kept grinding. I got that 5th fish, and I was ready to go into day 2 and give this thing all I had. Since I'm still down a GoPro from my Pickwick mishap, I didn't have my external battery and I didn't get to film on day 2. However, I have a few things ordered to make my next few tournaments a complete experience. So cross your fingers that I don't mess that up. But I'm going to just kind of run you through it and tell you about it. I started in the exact same spot, went out and did the exact same thing. And right off the bat, again, I stuck with my gun, stuck with that open water frog, landed an 18 3/4 in probably my 3rd cast, which almost reiterated that I need to keep doing that. That's what they're eating right now. So I worked along these mats, picked up 2 more fish between 16 3/4. Those fish were just hanging just off of the grass. A lot of my fish weren't coming in the middle of the mats, at least not on the open water stuff. They were right on the edges or even a few foot outside. So it's kind of nice when you know that you have nothing to lose. I was in 33rd place. I was relaxed. I was fishing my style. And it just kind of started working out. When my topwater bite died, I slowed way down. I picked up a weightless stick bait, flicked it out there, worked it methodically around those grass edges, picked up a limit pretty fast. I think I had about 80 inches or so. Not too bad. Definitely not going to make a push for a check, but it was a limit and it was early, and I knew then I could start to kind of grind and try to pick up those bigger fish. So on the back sides of some of the islands I was fishing, I found a couple of the mats that finally looked ready. Check this out. So you could hear those bluegill popping. There's that chartreuse looking green, yellow, film, slimy stuff. And I caught 2 coals on the hollow belly frog. Finally. Kept working the mats a little bit. Had a few more blow-ups that I missed. Not sure if they would have helped me. But about that point, I had maybe 82, 83 inches. I checked the leaderboard and I was sitting in the top 10. Not too comfortable about that because I know a lot of people hadn't uploaded their fish yet. When you're fishing a 2-day tournament, it is so important not to give up. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So I picked up a few fish here and there. Nothing that really helped me too much. A lot of those 16 1/4, 16.5 inch fish that I was catching on weightless baits. My topwater bite kind of died. The frog bite kind of shut off a little bit. I think there was a fairly narrow window there for that. So again, for the 2nd time, here's what's kind of cool. I had about 8 minutes left in the tournament, and hoping for some good vibes, I knew I needed 1 big coal to make a big move, and flicked out that weightless bait, saw my line just tick, set it, and it was an 18.5. Upgraded me about 3 inches, putting me at 86 3/4. Much better than I did the first day. Fished pretty clean, and to be honest with you, I thought that would have moved me up to about 6th or 7th place as of right now. So rushed back to the ramp, load up all my stuff, head to check in, fingers crossed, thought I was going to make the top 9, cash a check, felt really, really good about it. Come to the awards, and I missed the money by a 1/2 inch. That close. I took 10th place out of the 82 people fishing that tournament, which you win some, you lose some. But the biggest thing is that I was pretty happy. I had a lot of good friends do well, qualify for the Tournament of Champions in this tournament, and most importantly, 2 days in a row, I stuck it out to the very last minute, getting my limit on day 1, getting a big coal on day 2 when things weren't necessarily going my way. It just goes to show how important this is right here when you're fishing these tournaments, especially when you're on a bass factory like Lake Guntersville and you can put up 25 to 30 pounds in a matter of 10 minutes on any given point on that lake. You never know what's going to happen. You know, I could have hooked into a 23 incher and won that tournament just like that. You never know. You have to keep fishing. You've got to keep going. You've got to shake off the mistakes you've made, the fish you've lost, and keep pushing. So I was pretty, overall, though I didn't cash a check in this one, I was pretty happy with my performance, and I'm going to take that little bit of momentum and little token of wisdom there into my next 2 weeks. I've got back-to-back tournaments. One is a charity event, Fishing for Soldiers, when I can fish. I think most bodies of water in Tennessee are eligible. I think you all know where I'll be. Chickamauga and I have gotten pretty close this year. And the weekend after that, pretty excited about this one. It is the Native Titan Tournament back down on Guntersville, and we get to fish against the one and only Jordan Lee. He'll be in a kayak, so gonna go and try to give him a run for his money on his home body of water. Probably gonna end up donating my hard-earned coin to him, but you know, I'm excited. He's a great dude and hell of an angler, so it'll be good for us kayak people to have that experience, and hopefully I'll have my GoPro situation a little bit more manageable by then, and I'll have some good footage for you all. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and we'll catch you next time.